everybody. I'm Darcy Bakigard with the Prairie Public Weekly Web Chat, and I'm joined by two of my absolute favorite educators. Jamie, will you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes.
What do you do as a teacher?
Yes, my name is Jamie Zuel, and I am a professional school counselor at West Fargo High School.
And Holly, tell us about you.
I am Holly Leistikow. I am a professional special education teacher at West Fargo High School.
Is that an actual credential to be a professional school counselor?
Yes,
like that is a different thing?
Well, it's school counselor lingo. It's moving away from the guidance counselor.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so that makes sense.
So I'm a PSC, a professional school counselor.
We've been talking, I've had a couple conversations with elementary school teachers about social emotional learning with their students. And I reached out to the two of you to just have a conversation of social emotional learning in the middle school, high school sphere. You're both in a high school.
Yep.
And just kind of what does that look like in a high school versus, and you don't have to compare it to an elementary school. But I think first, should we as high school teachers be concerned about social emotional learning for kids who are in middle school, high school?
Oh, completely. I think, I mean, you don't just stop in 5th grade with your social emotional learning.
And you're like, we're good.
You guys got this. Go for puberty.
Right.
I think that's like probably more important time to start talking about those things and really educating students about it's okay to feel this way. Here are who you need to do. This is how you take care of yourself and your friends around you.
Yeah, and obviously you want to catch it in the elementary school, and I think that's where a lot of focus is. And I feel like it's shifting now. Where like, yes, there is a focus for high school. Like being able to help a kid regulate their emotions when they go through a breakup or they lose their dog or they, whatever. They got a bad message on Snapchat, whatever it is. Like, how do you, and this is a constant game, is like, how do we just work with the kids on where they're at, figure out what they need, and then move them in the direction of just taking a deep breath and realizing it is not the end of the world.
Do you have some basic go-to strategies that when kids are coming to you in whatever stage of crisis mode that you use to help address those concerns?
Well, I'm highly sensitive to this. No, I'm not. I'm terrible at gauging where they are.
Well, because by the time they're in high school, a lot of them are pretty good at hiding it.
Yeah.
Right.
Particularly from adults. They've kind of learned that for whatever reason, like, I'm not going to share this with my parents necessarily. So they are pretty good at hiding it.
And I think we're in a unique situation in the fact that I have my students for at least 2, 3, 4 years. And so we build that relationship. And so if I do see something on their face of, oh, something's going on, I just have them take a step back and process if they want to with me, or I talk to them and say, hey, is there something going on that you need to talk to your counselor about, or is there something we need to do so that we can get on with learning? And I just make sure, like, at the beginning of the year, we always talk about how my room it's a safe room. You don't get to come in here and lay waste to people in here. So you come in, this is, we're respectful in here. If you're having a bad day, you're free to have a bad day, but you're not free to put that bad day on everyone else. And then also, like, with phones and the access to social media, it's just making sure that they know that if that's going to be their priority, then that phone can't be with them.
Yeah.
And so just knowing.
So those are some good strategies for even heading off some of that stuff of building an environment where, like, we're trying to keep this at a minimum. Yes, if that cell phone isn't there, some of those triggers can be taken away.
Yeah, and I think, well, I'm going to speak for the counseling department at West Fargo. Like, years ago, it was very intentional that we were to get to know our kids. And we've got a caseload of anywhere from 275 to 350. And well, and that's good in North Dakota. It's worse in a lot of other areas in the country. But we're mandated. It's like 350 or so to one, and that's fine, and that's manageable. So we created things called minute meetings where we're face to face with all of our students at least twice a year, kind of breaking down the barrier of like the counseling office is not a place where everyone's going to go and because you have issues, right? So
setting up some boundaries and just letting them know like, hey, we're here to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything, and just be a trusted adult, right? Like, and Holly kind of talked about, like, you have to build that trust, but it's not just with us, it's with everyone in the building. So, and I'm kind of jumping around, but like what we're dealing with is high schoolers where their brain is going, belong, belong, belong. I need to belong. I need to belong. And that's tricky to navigate because, you know, like at the same
if they
time,
don't get that feeling, then the world is ending.
Yeah.
And so it's helping them realize, like, a kid comes into my office and I get to know them. I hopefully have a relationship with them to where I can tell, like Holly said, okay, something's going on. I'm not going to jump right into it. Hey, take a second, take a deep breath, just relax. I might step out, let them just breathe, and then come in and approach it. I think it's a lot of adults want to just get right to the point
and want to help.
Yes,
so it's coming from a good place. Like, we want to help.
Right, absolutely.
But they need space.
Yeah.
Just give them the space, allow for them to just process, and then help them understand, okay, so what can we do? And the reality is this isn't the first time, right? Like, they've dealt with stuff in the past. So it's like, okay, what have you done before? What's different now? Like, and helping them find these solutions that they already know, they just can't do it because brain's going, I don't have friends anymore.
Right, because it does feel like that in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a realistic feeling, but it's that instantaneous. That's how you feel right now.
Right.
You both mentioned creating a safe space, establishing that trust. How do you do that? Like, what are some of your strategies to make it? I mean, you're two people that, as a new person in Westboro, you do a really, I don't know if you know this or not, you both do a good job of making new teachers just feel welcome. You're able to do that for other adults. You're obviously doing that for teenagers. But what are some of your strategies for doing that in general? Like, how do you help create that culture of connectedness?
Well, I think just being at West Fargo High School, that's just kind of our culture anyway, that we want to build and want to have, is that, you know, you're going to have access to someone during your high school career that you connect with. And as teachers, we are working on making sure that that connection happens somewhere. I think we continue to work on that and continue to find ways to make that happen.
Right. If not with you specifically, with someone, with a staff member.
Right. And that's what I kind of, like you said, I front load a lot of the time at the beginning of the year, and then I reiterate multiple times during the year, like, you know, if I'm not your person, that's fine. Yeah. I don't have to be your person, but please have a person. And just making sure that they know that, you know, I'm not the warm, touchy-feely, huggy person. I'm not going to, if you're going to start crying, I'm going to ask you to go to the bathroom and take care of whatever that situation is right now, because that's not who I am. So if that's what they need, is someone to hug them and walk them through whatever it is, that I need them to know that I'm going to let them down. And so to find that
to set those expectations of being clear of this is what my skill set is. Yeah. And I think that also you were talking about helping them process their emotions, and we spent a lot of time in elementary school. What I also just heard you say is you're helping them identify how they process their emotions and helping them identify when something is bothering you and something is wrong. What do you need?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if I have a real like set agenda when I do these things. Like when I meet a student, I'm like, oh, you want to punch something? Great. Let's find something not a human. Yeah. And do that, you know, and just kind of walking them through those things. And it doesn't always work the first time. And when it does finally work and they've processed through in a healthy way and they come to me and they do what they need to do, I congratulate them after and, you know, and just say, hey, you did it.
So you're also providing feedback on, like, you made good choices on these things.
Yeah.
This was a positive outcome, even though it probably felt gross. This was a good thing that you just accomplished despite the way you were feeling.
Yeah. Like I have a couple students who their first instinct is to leave school.
Oh, and just escape.
And so when they come to my room and they're like, hey, I need to cool down. I'm like, awesome. Sit.
Because that's a huge improvement.
Yeah. Like you're here, and that's our number one goal, is that you're staying here. Second, let's see what we can do to get you back into class. And so just like thanking them for, hey, you did it, you stayed. And then processing through that of, now how do you feel through that? Like the world didn't collapse around you.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't as awful as you maybe thought it was going to be. You made it through this by doing that step.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what you said at the beginning too, Jamie, that you meet them where they're at, and it's all about like helping each student improve and go through that.
Yeah, I think for me, it is super important. It's a couple different things. It's names.
Yeah.
It's humor.
Yeah.
And it's meeting them where they're at. And this is for humans in general.
Yeah.
One of the things, I mean, and years and years ago, even before I was a school counselor, it was important to me. Like, this is who I am. This is how I'm wired. I'm wired to connect. And helping people realize that just because I have this role as a school counselor does not mean that I am better or worse than you as a teacher or as a para or whatever. Like, it's not about my title. It's about, this is what I do within this bigger picture. Students, it's kind of the same thing. Like, yeah, I have this title as a school counselor. At the same time, like, I'm just a dude. I'm just a person who has a story as well. And I think it's important. And I think there were years, and, you know, and I don't even know where it hit, but I felt like we've been to we go to so many meetings, and meetings just start.
Yeah.
And there's not always a time to just slow down and say, hey, everybody, and go around and introduce ourselves and get to like connect.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard because, and especially in your, like the situation that you're saying, like, we get wrapped up in the work. We get wrapped up in the work and trying to educate today's learners for tomorrow's world, right? Like, oh, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, can we just relate?
Can we build some relationships?
We need to just build relationship first to get there, because if kids or staff or whatever are not subscribed to that, like, then the work it doesn't matter. Right. Like, so I don't know. It's important. It's important to just go up and say, hey, but I'm also, if you look at the introvert extrovert scale, I'm about as far extrovert as possible. And I'm well, but like that's how I operate. I'm super uncomfortable in small settings. I'm not in this one because I know you.
Sure. And
really
we were just talking about how, like, we both kind of straddle that introvert extrovert. And I was sharing that I think it's a great opportunity to talk to students about that we do play different roles, and there are different times and places for different things. And to me, that oddly does connect to this social emotional learning thing.
Absolutely.
Because I have also tried, and I will say try because I've certainly failed at it as well. I had a general teaching philosophy because of my theater background that every single period deserved the best show I could possibly create. Just that I was responsible for the show that was going to happen in this orb. And no matter what had happened to me at home last night, I had a responsibility to these kids right now.
Right.
And no matter how I was feeling personally, because I've gone through, like, my whole life, I've had bouts of depression, and that's a constant ongoing struggle for me. So there are those mornings where I don't want to be anywhere, let alone like
Teaching
English at 7:45 in the
Right.
morning. But I would be very conscientious about telling kids, you know, like, I don't really feel like being here today. Do you guys ever have days like that? And of course they do. And then I would talk about, you know what though? Sometimes you need to fake it till you make it.
Yep.
And we're here and we're going to make the best possible situation out of this. And dang it all, if by the end of the day, after pretending to be in a good mood for the kids, in general, by the end of the day, I was in a much better mood.
Right.
Like maybe not the best mood, but I think that in terms of like playing that role in different places, I think that's a reasonable conversation to have with high schoolers of there are times, and that's part of finding those safe place to some extent. Because we don't want you as students to always feel like you have to play the role that you are.
Right.
Because I think that students create those boxes of I'm this.
Absolutely.
And I have to live up to that. And that's fine.
It's a very scary thing for a teacher to drop down that wall of I'm teacher, you are student. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and that's
that is
ingrained,
a
and that's absolutely like, nope, I'm in charge. You're going to listen. Right. And that's legit. And that can be okay. But
because there needs to be some structure.
Right. Absolutely.
But those relationships.
I think especially with kids who struggle with that social emotional learning is like, that's just not where they're at. And you know, because you really, I mean, you have to look at the teenage brain, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we talk about this all the time. The brain. And I think with all the newer research out there, like we know, and if you sit and talk about trauma, like, you know, like you're not even, you got the teenage brain operating on its own right now. Now you're throwing in all this complex trauma. And when you are now trying to help this student regulate their emotions, you know, there's this great analogy in our trauma training of like, you are trying to get a kid to go from like, to reduce the speed of their brain, right? Like, you know, they're firing at, you know, whatever, and you got to get them down to like have a conversation. Well, you have a kid who has complex trauma on board, multiple ACEs, if you will. Like they're already rolling at 100 miles an hour. So if you come in at 100 miles an hour, like that's a messy mess.
And there's research that has shown that when children, and I'm sure you guys have both read this, when children are exposed to those adverse childhood experiences, it actually prevents some of the brain regulatory parts of their brain don't fully develop because their body is in such fight or flight mode so often. So there's multiple factors going on there. And a teacher was talking to me how it was Kelsey Johnson. She said that sometimes she'll take a kid out in the hall and she said, you can see that the kid is ready to fight because they think they're in trouble. And she will just look at them and say, take a deep breath.
Right.
And simple. And the kid will start to talk and she'll go, no, it seems like you're I just want you to breathe. And she said, then she just watches them. And then sometimes she'll go, all right, take another breath. And then once she has helped slow them down, she said, then we'll have a little bit of a conversation focusing on what you said. What's going on? Not you're in trouble because, but you were making some choices that were unlike you. So what's going on?
Yeah. What's going on? And what do you need?
Yeah.
How many, like, when I ask a student, like, what do you need right now? They look at me like, what? Well, because they've like a lot of when has adult ever said that to me? You know what I mean? And I found that more this year than ever of like, I'm like, what do you need? Like, what do you need right now to help be successful here? Like, you know, we're here, the whole social thing, that's a part of school, but we're here to move you towards being the best student that you can be. With the resources you have around you, we're going to get you connected if you need help here and there and everywhere. But like, what do you need to be successful right now?
in this moment.
In this
and
moment.
you ask them the same
Right.
thing. Yep. Goes back to that. Have you had kids, and this is off the wall a little bit, but have you had students who are just like, well, I don't even know.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you have skills for like, how do you help kind of to go teachery on, like, how do you help scaffold them in their social emotional journey so that they kind of have a sense, because I think particularly that old Maslow's of hierarchy, the kids who aren't loved at home come to school to be loved.
Right.
Right. And so some of those kids, we also need to remember a lot of these kids do not have strong role models who are modeling for them. Like we joked that social emotional learning is over in 5th grade.
Yeah.
Right? Because we know a lot of adults don't have these skills.
Right.
And so kids are not seeing that, calm down, take a deep breath. They're not seeing that at home necessarily. So they don't know what the options are. So how do you help them like understand what they can do?
Yeah. Well,
in these situations?
I sometimes will throw out like, hey, you know, do you need a snack? Like sometimes when we're really angry, it's really just our stomach and our brain fighting for attention. And so do you need a snack? And they're like, no. Or, you know, well, do you just need a quiet space? Do you need like, and I just kind of go through 3 or 4 things, like not 100. I mean, just 3 or 4 to say, okay, and here's why I'm suggesting this, you know, and I always back it up with something so that I'm not just throwing things at them like willy-nilly. Like,
Right.
I want a candy bar.
Or like you said, like, do you just feel like you need to punch something?
Right.
Like, do we need to just grab a pillow so that you can just hit something right now?
Yeah, did you want me to grab a stack of paper? You can rip it all up. I'm sure we'll find more somewhere. So, you know, it's just giving them some options. And most of the time they're just like, oh, yeah, I think I'd like to just go for a walk. Or I think I'd like to just
It sounds like knowing, the way you said that as the student, it sounds like sometimes just knowing that there are options helps alleviate some of the stress.
Like you don't have to come up with it on your own. Like, okay, this is a new situation for you. Here are some things I might try.
It's a new situation for you, but it's also a very normal situation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, normalizing it is huge. And saying that it's okay. It's okay to feel this way.
Yeah.
You know, I see a lot of kids sitting in my office and like they're fighting back all these tears. And I'm like, that's okay. You're human. Like that's okay. That's emotion. And that's all right. Like, let it flow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that happen. And when you're ready.
Yeah.
That space again.
When you're ready, like, I'm here. And again, for some of these kids, it might be the only time they ever hear that. At the same time, that doesn't, like, they're going to hear it. Like, I'm here, I'm going to figure this out. I'm not probably going to have all the answers for you right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I can then work to help figure that out. Okay. Like, and I'm not going to ever do anything behind your back. Like, we're going to do this. Okay. We have to call home. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to say to your mom and her dad or guardian, not gardener.
So
I'm going to speak to your gardener.
There are no surprises.
Right.
It's very transparent. Right. We're treating you like an adult, really, because I'm not hiding things. We're not having a conversation and you're sitting in one office and we're debriefing your parents about what happened in another office. You're right here. You're part of this conversation.
I'm going to bring you along on this journey and help you understand. And is it perfect every time? Absolutely not. And I think that that's okay. I think we need to give ourselves permission to be able to say, oops, I messed up. And even to be able to say that as an adult to a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's another big piece is if a kid's coming in mad because you broke their trust, like, it's okay to like legitimately, genuinely say, hey man, I messed up. I messed up and I'm not. And that's very hard for adults.
Very hard for adults.
Particularly when you add in that, it's hard, I think, for adults. And then you add in what you were saying before of like, I'm the teacher.
Right.
And you're the student.
I don't make mistakes.
I think that adds an extra layer to it that makes it even harder.
Yep. So,
but simultaneously makes it that much more powerful when you do just go, no, you're right. That was a good point.
Yeah.
that's a crappy situation. And you're right. I messed up.
You're bringing them into a conversation versus it's me telling you,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that's ultimately what it comes down to is we're going to sit and talk about this together. This isn't me. Because kids always come in, well, I need some advice. And I'm like, I'm not here to give advice. You know, maybe, I mean, I've got, I may have some ideas, but like, this is a conversation.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, this is us, me as the adult helping
You'll
you.
be a sounding board.
Right. Walk through this. And, you know, a student came in today. Like, I need a third person to be able to just hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
What a powerful gift, though, to give a kid.
It was incredible.
You both have talked a lot about being able, like making space for these conversations. I'm going to ask maybe the hardest question. How do you make time for that? As an educator, like with everything else, with your caseloads and the things that you have to do in a day and the lesson plans and the actual teaching, like you're scheduled to do things. How can we help make space in our day, big or small, to help make some of these things? And I'm putting up for people who are listening, these 5 strategies for promoting high schoolers' mental well-being. His answer to the time, office hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the two of you have that luxury in your schedules. And sometimes as a teacher, my prep basically could become an office hour. Like I had a little bit of built-in time that I could call office hours.
Yeah, well, and most emotional outbursts happen during my office hours, so it works out well.
Kids time them so well.
Right.
They'd like, no, like, all right, nope, I can't now. It's 10 o'clock. Nope, she doesn't have prep.
No, like I think and that's part of my, okay, I'm going to let you stand over here and take a breath and calm down. I have to get this started over here. You are important. I will be there. But I also have all these
people
too.
are also important.
Yeah. And so and usually by that time, like I get these guys started, I get them where they need to be going and doing and whatever. And I come back to them. And by then they've had a chance to breathe and calm down.
They've slowed down.
Yeah. And so I think that's actually kind of beneficial. Like actually having that, like, I can't drop it right now. You're important to me, but I need you to just hold on for 1 minute.
Do you think that also, I mean, the way you described it, it does. Sometimes I think that it's easy to get sucked into teenagers' drama. That feels like a really nice way of acknowledging that you're having a hard time, but not getting sucked in to this is the most important thing.
Right.
Because I think they sometimes think this is the most important thing.
Absolutely. To them it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think that goes just across the board, even with us adults. Like if we've got an issue with something, most of the time it's like, no, this is it.
Right.
Everything else doesn't like this. And I get that. At the same time, like my position as a school counselor, like, I mean, I've got my day and kids have to come and make an appointment and, you know, so like I literally have office hours. However, some of the non-negotiables is lunch.
Yep. You set boundaries.
Boundaries. And that's one of the things that we as an office are working really hard at. And we have walk-in calendars now. So like one of us, there's 5 of us and there's 5 days in the week. So like walk-in counselor on Wednesdays. I don't get anything scheduled. We hold that true with our 2 registrar and para, like no appointments get scheduled because we're available.
The emergency.
I'm the emergency
contact.
go-to. And if Holly has a student and their student comes in and Holly's available to meet with them, yes, they will. And it won't necessarily, but my job is to like get them calm and get them back and process what we need to process later. Or if it's a very serious situation, like obviously I'm rolling with it. I'm going to make it happen.
That's really powerful to know. Like, oh, I know there is someone in the counseling office. So between the admin team. So I think also for a classroom teacher, if that is something that you're dealing with and you know that this kid needs someone right now, it might not be able to be you, but don't be afraid. I mean, this kind of goes to number 5, use the professionals.
Yeah. Use your professionals. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, I like it because it's, you know, there are going to be times where it's totally out of my realm, right?
Yeah.
I get a kid from Europe. I'm only trained to, So it's like, know your
limits.
Know your limits. Know what, know your role, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
And this goes into just like, and we have to be able to say, I can't go further, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to give myself permission to be okay with saying, I cannot help you right now, but I know who can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of what
I'm
you
going
said.
to ask that you trust me, and I will walk with you, but I'm going to introduce you to our wellness facilitator.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you to the social worker. I'm going to we're going to take it, but I can walk with you. I can't go there. Right. As much as I want to.
Right. Because we do care about you.
Yes.
We care about you. This
Absolutely.
isn't about the level of caring. That's also an important step, I think, for helping students identify, again, that self-assessment of what is something that warrants and needs a little bit more care. I felt like sometimes the kids were making really big deals out of not that big of a deal. And so they kind of were escalating things to the point where like they thought professionals should be called in. And conversely, there are sometimes where kids don't know how deep they're into stuff sometimes.
Right.
The other side of it. Some kids escalate, but I think sometimes some kids don't know how much they do need. So that's also a regulatory
gift. The ACEs and the trauma, like if you're from that life where that's normal, it's just a normal day. Whereas to another student who that's not their normal, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that kid.
Everything's ending.
Yeah. And so I think just keeping the ACEs and the trauma lens in and knowing, it's important to kind of get to know that part of it. Like,
that's great.
And like, one thing I was going to add is the other part of having kids like step away and you know that I need to take care of these and I'll be back is I've seen the reverse happen where they're like, the teachers jumped in head first to help this kid. And now there's all these other kids who are like, well,
what about me?
Yo. Hey. And so then they start to feel like that disconnect and that break of trust because
and kind of like those kids, okay, so now in order to get your attention, I know that I have to do that. That's what garners attention. So there is also that like what behavior is getting rewarded in the classroom, so to speak. I want to wrap up with a final question of just a little bit of that connection we've alluded to of what are some things that you do for you? Because both of you working with the special education department, working in your counseling team, I feel as a classroom teacher, I felt like both of you were on the front lines of a lot of that and seeing a lot of that trauma and those emotional outbursts that I didn't necessarily have to process. So how do you take care of you so that you can take care of them?
It's going to sound really cold and mean, but I kind of like just shut off at the end of the day. Like I'm now done being teacher Holly, and I'm going to go be present for my kids.
Because they deserve you too.
They deserve all of me also. And so like, and I tell parents who like want to email me or like, are upset because I didn't get back to them at 7:00 at night. I'm honest with them. And I was like, that's time for my family. And they get me at that time. And I know a lot of teachers have a hard time disconnecting like that. They can't just shut off.
Yeah.
But that's another reason why I don't share any type of
personal contact information,
other than, the school email and stuff. And I don't have alerts on my phone to go off because that little number is going to send me over the edge.
Sure.
Because I'm going to want to, what is it? And so I don't have that because I know that is a trigger for me to be sucked back in. But also like we started the whole people project and the whole being present in myself, and I go to a psychologist and I work through my things too, because we're all human, we're all adults, we all know that there are parts of us that we need to work on. And so having my people that I reach out to and today sucked, I really need to process it, and doing that kind of stuff. Like accepting that you're human and like you get to have your bad days and you can have these feels. And one of my best friends will point out to me, like, I love that you are all in for this kid, but is that yours to worry about?
Oh.
And sometimes that is like a smack in the face where you're like, whoa, you're right. That's not mine to worry about right now. And so having people and finding ways to de-stress and getting together with colleagues and hanging out and having fun and whatever it is. I mean, you go dance on bleachers.
You have some fun side gigs that help blow off steam.
Yeah, I mean, running around like an idiot at baseball games is kind of fun for the summer, but
for the Red Hawks, this isn't something that he just does. He goes to high school basketball games and runs around on the bleachers. We should be a little
This
bit.
is for we're a baseball team.
This is actually legit. It's planned.
Legit. Yes, but that feeds me in a way that is
cathartic.
It's super cathartic, and it's how I'm wired. And so for me to reboot in the summer, like, that's a big piece. I think throughout the year, one of the things that we as a department, and we're flexible in the way where we can structure things, is that lunch kind of becomes a non-negotiable. Like, we don't have prep periods, we don't have anything, but we take a good chunk of lunch and we eat together. And we process and we laugh our faces off, man. And it's a great, like, midday thing, right? And it's good. And if we notice that not everyone's around the table, like, we're gonna call you out on it. Like, we're gonna say, okay, like, it's time to, because that is healthy. Humor.
But and that connection piece, like my first year teaching, I never came to lunch. And finally, a veteran teacher came to my room and she said, "You're having lunch with me." It was not a question. Judy came in my room and she said, "You're having lunch with me." And she looked me in the eyes and she said, "You need a break." She said, "I know it feels like you have a lot to do."
Right.
She was very understanding. She acknowledged, this is what you're feeling as a new young teacher. You have a lot to do, but you have to come to lunch.
Yeah.
For a person like me who does have a tendency to self-isolate in general,
right,
that was a huge gift that she gave me as a young teacher. So I really like that system of have your network of support,
right,
and have those agreements. And when someone doesn't come to those things, call them on it. Call them, because then they're not taking care. Either they're not taking care of themselves, or something's going on that they maybe need.
Right.
A little extra something.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, that is huge throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, like, I don't put work email. I don't put anything work related on my phone.
Right.
I don't bring my computer home. I'm able to do that. I'm not having to grade papers.
Sure.
But with some of the heavy stuff that I mean, like, on a daily basis, like, I might all of a sudden talk to a kid, "Hey, I got accepted into Concordia and they're giving me a $50,000 scholarship." Cool.
Hey.
That person leaves. Next person comes in. Yeah, my mom didn't come home last night until right before I went to school, and she was drunk out of her mind. Oh, okay. All right. This is the
just
ebb
the
and
roller
flow of my
coaster
day.
of your day.
So, like, I'm like, okay, I can only, and it's subscribing to this idea that I can only do what I can do in the time that I'm given.
Yeah.
Like, this is a job. I am passionate about making a difference. I'm going to do that, but I can only do so much in the time that I'm given at West Fargo High School.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go home and I'm going to give my time to my family. I mean, Holly said it, like, that's huge. Like, I get in my car, I listen to a little Steely Dan. It might be I listen to NPR. It might mean I listen to K-Fan and listen to, like, but I just go to shut off and I turn it on, and then I pick my kids up, and then it's like, okay, now I just got to find time, like, and of course, like, exercise and eating healthy, like, all that stuff is healthy, but, like, my practice of self-care is something that we're really trying to incorporate at school. Is like, are you reflecting, right? And that's, I think, early in my program with the school counseling program is we really dove into the nitty gritty, the good, the bad, the ugly of ourselves. So it's important for me to know myself, know what triggers, know what I do well, know what I don't do well, so I can serve. And that at the same time, like, that's a difficult thing. Like, reflecting and calling some of that stuff out is hard. At the same time,
It's necessary.
it's totally necessary. And you know, and am I perfect at it? No, but it's like it's important to, and saying no, like, sorry, not doing that.
What I'm hearing in this, because I'm trying, like, the guilt in me of feeling like I'm not doing enough.
Right.
What I'm hearing though is, in order for me to do the job, I have to have, like, this isn't about me saying no to something. This is about me saying yes to me, so that I can say yes to them. And like, that we need both of those pieces. And so we need to be open to that.
Yeah. And being okay with saying no, right? Like, there's always like, no, but, right? Like, and then you have to, like, justify saying no.
Right.
And instead of saying no, and I'm going to do this for me, and that's okay. Like, so
if you need that excuse, because I was thinking of, like, oh my goodness. And then I went, no, if I need the excuse, I can say my excuse is, in order, like, in terms of taking care of me, my excuse is my kids deserve it.
Yeah.
My students deserve it for me to take time to take care of me.
Right.
Yeah. And they, like, there's that whole saying, like, to new moms, like, you're a better mom if you take care of yourself.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
It's the same thing as, if you're going to be a better teacher
if you take care of you.
take care of you. And, you know, it's important to, like, if, like, we're more introverted, so it's okay for me to be like, I've been surrounded by 1,500 people for 8 hours. I'm just going to sit in a corner by myself for a while, because that's okay. That's what I need. And, like, I have friends who are very introverted, and they're like, yeah, I'm not leaving my house.
Right.
If you guys need me, you can come to me, but this is what I need to be. And I think, like you said, finding that person in you and saying, this is what I need in order to be successful later is important. And, like, calling people out on it, like,
having that,
what, you're too important for us at lunch?
And I'm, you know, like, and it's, I came in education later, like, you know,
me too.
Like, I lived in the nonprofit world for a long time. I lived doing camps, doing retreat programs, like, and that was always kind of, like, preached to me. So when I got to education, like, I didn't, like, you know, and I see young teachers having a hard time, because it's like, okay, I gotta keep that. I gotta manage my classroom. I have standards. I have all this stuff. And it's just like, oh, just slow down. Just slow down. And that comes with time. It comes with experience.
It comes with time.
And it, you know, like, and it's.
My advice to new teachers this year, like, I think 10 years ago, someone had asked me, like, what is your advice to teachers? It would be very different. My advice to teachers now is, whether you think it or not, you being there is so much better for those kids than you not being there before you've done anything.
Right.
You being there is better for those kids than you not being there.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. Just
really
be
lucky.
there. And when the lesson doesn't go the way you wanted, or, like, whatever happens, like, the other part of that coin is, I don't know, the kids don't know. Like, they don't know the difference. So also, like, acknowledge, like, they don't know the difference. Like, they're a little, but you being there, that's what they need.
Yeah.
But,
and
like,
so you're good.
And ultimately, like, I feel like that's just a solid wrap up of, like, I mean, honestly, it
Be there.
that's it. Like, just be. Just be. That education, I think sometimes it becomes, people want it to become this rocket science, and I really don't see it that way. You know, we put standards, we have all of this stuff, and there's all these pedagogies and all these methods, which are all helpful. But ultimately, like, yes, if you're teaching a subject, you need to be knowledgeable in that subject, but
You're also
it's
teaching
like,
humans.
but you have to teach kids. And,
Yeah.
and if you're going to do that through English, cool. If you're going to do that through math, cool. But like, ultimately, and I'm sure whoever's listening to this is going, of course, there's the fluffy counselor. But like, honestly, it's what it comes, it comes down bottom line to that. And David Thorpe, he's retiring this year, and just a wise man, and he's been in it for so long, and he said it's so important to reinvent yourself every so often. It's okay to reinvent yourself and just be present.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
That's what they need.
One of the things I say a lot, because I come in from that special ed background, is when teachers are like, it has to get done, I'll be like, and if it doesn't, what happens?
Correct. And that goes back to this list.
Yeah.
Number 4, consider what matters.
Right.
And this I really liked, because I'll agree, my first few years teaching, it was like, no, like you need, like my grade book has to have everything, like everything, man, like all of this, like content.
Right.
And now I'm like, yeah, like get me these 3 things, because this is what really matters.
Yeah.
And if we also are just honest about it, if something was going on in our lives, I have never had an administrator who hasn't understood.
Right.
And and I may be lucky in that regard, but anytime I've been in a situation where like stuff is accumulating personally, I've always had administrators who are like, you're fine.
Yeah.
Take your time. Right. And so if we expect that kind of treatment as professionals, and I know school is different, I know it's a different thing, but these kids, as you keep saying, they are people, they're humans. And so we can acknowledge that, sometimes they don't have to do every single worksheet.
Right. And our administration is really awesome. I think they'll call us on it. Like they'll be like, hey, you know what? Something's going on. You need to take a sick day.
Oh, sure.
And just do something other than be here for that day. You're not allowed to talk about school. You're not allowed to look at it. You're not allowed to answer an email. And so they're telling us to do that, making it okay. And so we can make that okay for students too. And it's that whole trickle down effect. If it's okay for my administrator to say, hey, you know what, something's going on, you need to take a step back.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's okay. And so then, it makes me a better teacher. Therefore I can do that to my students.
And you can be there for them. Thank you guys, not to be too cheesy, but thank you for being here for me and just being you. And I'm giving
Thanks for the opportunity.
ideas. This was a delight.